Hey everyone, welcome. We have Matt with us today, who just earned a full bachelor's degree in less than 6 months after dropping out of school multiple times and doing this while working a 50-hour-a-week job. And we're going to tell you how he did it and hopefully inspire you to go get a college degree faster. Matt, welcome and thank you so much for being with us.
Absolutely.
Can we
Thanks for
just
that wonderful intro.
Yeah. Hey, can we just I'm also a fellow dropout, so that resonates with me. We're going to help some people here. Matt, can you start off by just kind of telling your story, like your education story and how this happened? And of course, now bachelor's degree in less than 6 months. I'll turn it to you.
I'm a 42-year-old now, getting on in age. And, I've thought a lot about my career and my education, like many times throughout the years, right? Um, why didn't I stick it out or stay in school, etc. So for me, when I was in high school, I didn't do super well. I remember like I had like 52% in English, and I thought, all right, I pass, I'm good, because that's all you needed to get your grade 12 education, right? I grew up in sort of a Christian home, so I was sort of directed a little bit towards kind of going to like a Bible college. So that's kind of what I did after high school. I ended up doing 2 years of that. It was a 4-year program, but after the second year, just wasn't feeling it, and I knew it wasn't for me, and decided that I was going to drop out. Obviously, like I wasn't applying myself either. I was taking on a ton of extracurricular activities on the side that sort of di- distracted me from studying. So I would kind of chalk it up to that, and yeah, just being kind of disciplined when I was 17, 18, like trying to attend, a college. So that was my first crack at it. Um, Ended up going into the workforce for a little bit, and eventually returning to school. I tried going to another university and doing some like science courses, distance ed, that type of thing. And again, not being able to like apply myself, or like I remember I was having a really great time like learning the material. A lot of it was like hunt and peck. So, they gave me a pretty thick textbook, like a 3-inch thick textbook. And really it was like all the information's in there. You just have to find it. The layouts weren't very good. This was probably like 2015. And I'm not sure if, you know, this particular school that I chose um, had a very great online program, because it was just really difficult to follow. I remember going to one of the exams, and so it was a proctored exam at another nearby college. And so I went to the college and sat in this room with like probably 30 or 40 people. And we were crammed in there, and it was loud. And like, I didn't bring earplugs. I thought, oh, shoot, like earplugs would have been great for this. They give you a pencil and paper, and you're having to, write all this stuff out. And I ended up flunking that exam, which ended up failing me for the course, which I was in great in up to that point. But the exam made me realize, geez, there was a whole bunch of stuff in here that I didn't even cover or read or know that I needed to read. So I did a couple of those courses, organic chemistry, biology. I just didn't do well. So that was my second attempt, and essentially flunked out and stopped there. I have done a little bit of power engineering. So I did complete a power engineering diploma, and I'm certified as an environmental operator. So I've had to do correspondence courses, put your time in. It's kind of like a trade, and then write an exam type thing, like a provincial or state exam. And so I've been able to do that. I'm actually quite good at multiple choice exams. So for me, it was like all these things kind of accumulated in my brain, and I was doing a Google search on like, okay, I'm an older guy. I don't have a ton of time. I have to work full time. I have a home and a wife and family, etc. Um, is there a program out there that is fit for someone like me that doesn't can kind of focus a little bit of time, but not a whole ton, and complete a degree quicker than the average like brick and mortar? Because I couldn't go back to university full time, which was kind of where my brain was. I was like, I'm going to have to eventually drop out of work and just go back to school full time. And I had just put my wife through university. She did 4 years. So it was kind of like, okay, now that she has a job, maybe it's my turn. Stumbled across one of Ryan's videos. And sure enough, it was like kind of a light at the end of the tunnel moment. Like, I could do this. Like, I just need more information. And so I ended up going with Ryan's program and learning a bunch of stuff, tricks of the trade, if you want to call them, and just jumping in with both feet and with a lot of determination and focus, was able to get that degree in that 6-month term at WVU. So there you go. That's a bit of a long-winded story. Sorry about that.
That's what we want to hear, Matt. Like, this is amazing. Congratulations. If for those of you, let's get into like how we actually do this to help those watching. Anyone who's like, oh my gosh, I want to do this, like I'm next, I'll leave some links to some resources down below in the video description. By the way, your story is so similar to so many people, including myself. I was super similar. Third time was the charm for me. College education, the traditional system is like, we're going to have this curriculum, textbooks, lesson plans, study guides, lectures, homework, quizzes. Like, we all know, like anyone watching, you know what we're talking about. There are schools, a lot of schools that offer almost like self-learning style programs where you can go at your own pace. Matt went to Western Governors University. There are lots of schools that do this. A great school choice, by the way. But essentially, it's like if you learn the material and you prove to us that you learned the material, we'll give you credit for the class. And Matt, you took advantage of that and you went and learned everything you needed to learn in 6 months and got a full bachelor's degree, starting back at 0, by the way. I know people are going to have questions and be like, well, how many credits did you start with? You lost those credits, right? And you started at 0 again. So we're kind of taking advantage of these programs where it's self-education, self-study. By the way, it's way easier to learn on your own than through the school system, especially with the technology we have. So let's talk about that system, Matt. Like, you went to school traditionally, and then you went in kind of this new age way of education. Can you tell us kind of your experiences with both, how they differ, and how it was a game changer for you? Because you went from, like me, dropping out twice and then boom, smooth success with a lot of work, obviously. But you crushed it. What was the difference?
Okay. These are great questions. So yeah, going to the traditional, I think a lot of times we call it the brick and mortar style school. There's a time you have to show up to class. There's, a lecture that's involved. There's usually some reading material and you might have to do some essays or something like that along the way. And then usually a final exam, or there's a midterm and then a final exam. Midterms are the practice just to see if you're kind of ready to keep going and then take the final. It's very much directed around like their time, like whatever time that they set for you, in intervals is what you have to sort of be paced with. And usually you're in maybe 5 classes or something like that per semester. And a semester might be like 4 months long or something like that. Right. So yeah. Also, I would say there's a lot to do with like being young as well and like learning things for the first time versus having a little bit of life experience, maybe have worked in some type of industry and understanding like how you have to pay your bills at home. You have a water bill, you have an electrical bill, you have your house insurance, you have your credit cards on this side, you have your bank account on this side. And so like for me, I took a business degree with GNU. And so a lot of those pieces were already kind of floating around, and it was sort of putting the puzzles together that sort of helped me get through. And so when I came up to material, I'm like, oh, I know what tariffs are because they've been all over the news and we've been talking about them. And now they're showing up in this course that I'm studying for. So it was easy. It was easy now that I'm older to kind of put the pieces together. So there's a bit of a difference between being really young going to school and then, having some life experience and some work experience and then trying another crack at it, I think. But yeah, like just going back to just the pace of things. So school normally will set your pace. In a program where you're able to just complete the course and then move on, and you can really just focus on one course at a time. So for instance, I did like applied algebra. All I had to do was focus on applied algebra for a week. And that's all I did. And by the end, I was ready to take that exam. I didn't have to schedule it way in advance and, wait 2 weeks to write this proctored exam somewhere at like another college with 40 kids in the room making noise and, distractions, etc. I could get the proctoring done virtually in the privacy of my own home, literally an hour or hours after I had completed all the study material that I needed to, wrote the practice exam, which doesn't need to be proctored, and boom, I'm ready for the final, study anything that I need to study for. And then I could schedule the final for say an hour later, do a little bit more studying and get that course done and move on to the next course. And so when you have 39 courses to do, which is what I had on my plate, it was just focus on one, get it finished, and move on to the next one, not 5 or 6 courses all jumbling around in my head at the same time and waiting to, get to this midterm and then waiting to get to this final exam and then writing them all at the same time. So I feel like that is a huge reason why we can accelerate your degree faster in a program that allows you to kind of, I'm not going to say challenge the exam, because you can't just go in and challenge an exam. You're going to need to go through the course material, learn things, memorize a lot, maybe make screenshots or whatever, flashcards for yourself so that you can then go back and go, okay, yeah, right. I remember that. And let me to remember that for the exam, etc. So that's sort of my experience between the two.
I'm so glad you brought up math because a ton of you watching right now are probably like, I hate math. Like, how could I pass my math classes and get a degree in 6 months? Like Matt just said, he learned algebra in a week, 1 week. That's crazy. My experience was similar. Here's the thing, and I don't know about you, Matt. I was terrible at math growing up because I didn't care. Were you good at math growing up?
I was actually half decent, but it's, you learn so much more when you're, again, focused on one thing at a time, because algebra is very different from just regular old long division. So, you know, if you can get focused on one thing, the way that these programs are structured, and especially WG, I really enjoyed like their structure because they literally take you from, like they would call it week one and they would call it that 10-week course or whatever. And you can just keep plowing through and it's building on top of each other. It's just like when you went to kindergarten or grade one, they teach you basic math. And by the time you're in grade 11, you're in advanced math. You can do that quicker, especially as like an adult who kind of already has like base knowledge and stuff like that. So it's not as scary as you think. My program was a Bachelor of Science in Business Administration, which essentially does focus more on sort of the practical way of looking at business. And so there was probably 3 or 4 math courses in there, or math related courses or applied science or something like that. And so, those ones were scary at first, but as soon as you get into it, you're like, okay, this is making sense. And as you move through it, you just build upon what you just learned. And then, and I found the exams to be very easy to work through because they actually start usually question 1 through 10 is the first section that you study. Question, 10 through 20 or 11 through 20 is then the next, week of study, so it's the next bit of material until you get to the end where it's usually the harder stuff. So yeah, anywho,
Totally.
that's my experience with
Yeah.
W2.
Yeah, totally. For me, like I struggled with math growing up because I didn't care. Like I was more interested in hanging out with my friends and playing sports and stuff like that. As a college student, like my first go at college, I remember my math class, I did really well because my teacher was really, really good. And it kind of dawned on me like, oh, I don't suck at math. I just like didn't have the right teachers and I wasn't interested. And as an adult, oh, it's kind of different. Well, let's say you're enrolled in college and you're doing this online thing and you don't understand your math teacher. As adults, we have control over being like, okay, what math concepts do I need to learn? Let's go find a teacher on YouTube that resonates with me. And all of a sudden it clicks and it becomes so much easier. And like you said, you just learn one thing start to finish. It makes it so much faster. Matt, I want to address a concern. Like people on my YouTube videos all the time will say things like, oh, you got a degree that fast? There's no way you learned anything because I spent 5 years in college, so I learned more than you did. There's no way you can learn what I learned in that amount of time. What are your thoughts on, because you spent multiple years at college the traditional way, and then you just got a bachelor's degree in 6 months. Did you learn more your like the traditional way and less because you went faster? Like, what are your thoughts with that concept?
Yeah, I mean, this one kind of hits a little closer to home too, because, when you do this, when you go this fast and earn that degree, you've earned it. And no one can now take that away from you. But then you have to go to you know, your spouse or your mom or whoever, the people around you, and say, yeah, I earned this. And they might ask, like, well, how fast did you, like work your way through that? And well, 6 months. And, you'll see like a look on their face, like that's impossible. Like it's a fate, you know, free of some kind. Like, no one can do that. So, you almost have to, and like I say, again, no one can take this away from you. So you're fine. It's then, I guess, coming up with the reasons why you can do it, and explaining that might be the hard part. So, for instance, my wife's mom said, "That's impossible. Like, how could you even do that?" And so my explanation is, like, I'm a mature student, right? I'm in my 40s. I've been working with large companies now for the past 15 years. And so I've learned a lot of the basics, and I've been making the connections from, say, the concept to the educational criteria, I guess. And those become really easy if you see them, over and over and over again through the years, right? And not everything is going to be an old concept that you're now just making the connection. Some things are going to be brand new concepts. And so that would be my argument to going to school at 17 years old. We're having to make so many new connections to concepts you've never even heard of or thought of before. And so, you're already like one step ahead when you go ahead and try to accomplish, a degree in a time that's like this accelerated type. Another thing that I would say is the online version of this also allows you to go at your own pace. And so if I wanted to take 4 years, I could go at the pace that they suggest, right? They're suggesting, take a week to learn this bit of this course, take a week to learn this bit. And by the end, it would be just like a normal school semester. Um, but if you're driven and you know that this is something that you want to accomplish in a quicker time period, then you just put your head down and you study the material and just go through the check boxes. Essentially, I've learned this, I understand it, and I've proven it now on this practice exam, and here we go for the final. And so, it's how many check boxes can you complete in whatever time period you deem that necessary to complete it in. And my time period was 6 months. That's what I wanted to feel. One other thing I'll say is that 6 months seems deceiving because when you go to school, you're in school full time, say, for like a 4 month period, and then you have breaks, and you have Thanksgiving, and you have Christmas, and you have summer breaks, and all this stuff. When you sign up for something like this, and you've dedicated 6 months, not 2 months here, break, long break, another 2 months, break. It's 6 months of every day after work, every day on the weekends. Like I was working right into July and actually right up to August 1st. I only had half the summer to enjoy because I was getting work done on all the weekends and all my time off. So essentially, yes, I didn't have a great, social life, and I had to cancel a lot of, family events or, just tell people like, I'm sorry, I can't do this. I'm busy. But that's because I made the choice to do what I was going to do within the time period that I wanted to do. I could have done it in 2 or 3 years if I wanted to. And I could have went to those family events, but I had decided in my mind that every weekend I was going to dedicate 15 to 30 hours on schooling. And during the week, I was going to dedicate an hour or two every day after work schooling. So it's up to you how quickly you want to complete this, right? And so there is an argument there to say, like, I, I did this at my own pace, and my pace was fast.
The thing I love though is you're in control, right? Like for me, for those who follow my channel, I got a bachelor's degree in 9 months. It's been years. There's so many more tools to help you go faster. But something that was important to me was like, you know, I am not like I'm not the type of person that can just power through and never have breaks. Like that's just not me. So for me, I'm not doing any schoolwork ever on Saturdays or Sundays. So for me, it was Monday through Friday I worked, and then I would do my study after work or during work if I had time during work. And then like Friday mornings, I would try to test out of a class, and then I would take the whole weekend off because I just knew myself and how I'd burn out. And like I burned out and dropped out of college twice before, and I didn't want to risk that by overdoing it and being like, no, this isn't worth it. But you're in control. Another thing with college curriculum, we're like, colleges want to teach us this much information when we only need to learn this much, or this is what we're tested on. Like, you go sit in front of a teacher to be lectured. How much of that lecture is their own opinion and has nothing to do with the actual curriculum that's going to be on the exam? Well, with this process, and I don't know if you noticed this, Matt, but you can weed out stuff like that. You can be like, I don't need that. I'm skipping this. Or you can be like, this one concept is super interesting. And I think I'm actually going to use this in my career. And you can go down that rabbit hole and study that one concept as deep as you want. So, yes, you're required to learn what you need to learn to like test out of a class, but you have the flexibility to like skip stuff that's not important or to go deep on stuff that is. Did you I don't know, what are your thoughts there?
Absolutely. Yeah, there's so many distractions and rabbit holes that you can get thrown down. Even if there was a concept that pops up and you're not sure about it, you can Google it and you can go down the Google rabbit's hole, the YouTube rabbit's hole, and learn everything you need to learn about that concept. And then you only have one question on the exam that really has to do with that. And so a lot of ways, I'm not going to say a lot of ways, I think you've learned something at least, but you've wasted a lot of time trying to learn one small thing where you could kind of get a bit of a broader picture and just quickly, like a chat GPT review of one concept and then move on to the next concept that you need to learn. So yes, and they're great tools. And I can see you're smiling. You're probably going to think you're going to comment on the chat GPT, I think.
Yeah, like the tools we have,
Yeah,
it's
for sure.
ridiculous. Like it is so much easier to learn today than it was even 2 years ago. It's it's really, really getting insane. For anyone that's like struggled with learning over the years, like it just today's age is it's a completely different ball game. It's AI for learning is really awesome. Like there's an application inside of ChatGPT called Tutor Me, and it's like, if you know how to search for GPTs on the left-hand side of ChatGPT, search Tutor Me, and then you can go ask it like a math question, like, "Teach me how to graph fractions." And literally, it's programmed to go back and forth and say like, "Okay, what do you already know?" "I know nothing." "Okay, when you see this, what does that tell you?" "I don't know." And it will keep backing up and going and meeting you at where you're at, and then it will bring you forward in a conversational style. Like, we didn't have this even a year or 2 ago. Like, it's getting
Right.
really crazy. It's getting fun. Like, using these tools is making school and education more fun as well. Um,
Even in work, we use it. We're using and Grammarly. So with WGU, Grammarly comes as a freebie, and I've just continued using it for work, and it corrects all my emails. And there's even things that don't do auto spell check. Like different programs like SAP. So long story short, Grammarly will jump into SAP and do the grammar checks and spelling checks for you. And so now I never make a mistake. But yeah, so these tools when I was going to college for the first time, like it was 2001. I remember actually 9/11 happened in my first year of college. And we weren't able to use online resources. Like you couldn't Wikipedia something. I don't even know if Wikipedia existed, but you couldn't Google something. Even then, Google, I don't think really had much traction. But you couldn't search something online, use a website as a reference back then. They told us that was a no-go. You had to use the library. You had to use the do decimal system, like where you're finding things in like a index. And like it was so much more work back then to try to get references and study and find the right material. Now it is literally all at the fingertips. If you're doing one of these, online universities, like you're just sitting at the comfort of your own home, and just searching and finding information. Like you don't have to get up, walk to the library, find a book, read it, write down the quote on a piece of paper and then bring it back to your dorm room for the rest of your paper or whatever. So like, it's just like exponentially things have changed so much that there's no reason why you can't complete a degree quicker than 4 years.
Exactly. Yet schools still have the 4-year system. Like the amount of information we can put in our brains in a short amount of time, it's getting crazy, but the system hasn't changed. Like it doesn't make sense. Luckily, there are a lot of schools out there like what we're talking about here that do have self-paced programs, and that's really one of the big keys to being able to do this is finding the right programs. Now, Matt, you already have a good job. You still went and got this degree. You mentioned you've had thoughts like, "Man, why didn't I finish? I wish I would have stuck it out." You went and got the degree. What are you doing it with it now? Like, what's this degree doing for you?
Yeah. So, I've worked in water and wastewater treatment now for 15 years. After college, I did some work in forestry and then I moved to Seattle and I was in a punk band. My best friend had got married to a gal down there. And so I was living with them and they ended up having a kid. And so I had to move around and sleep on other people's couches. And it was, it was definitely a time in life where I was not thinking about school or like long-term work. But then I met a girl from down there and we ended up getting engaged. And so I moved back to my hometown. My hometown is kind of a little pulp mill town on North Vancouver Island in Canada. And I got a job at the pulp mill and started working there. And in once you're in that unionized environment, you can usually get into a trade. And so, I have looked at trying to get into the electrical trade or getting into the powerhouse and become a power engineer. Um, or the choice that I made was to go into the environmental department and do the environmental certificate program, which essentially it's a trade as well, but it's for drinking water certification and wastewater certification. And so that's the route I chose and ended up doing that for about 15 years or so, up until the point where I started working where I am now. And so I'm the operations supervisor at McLaughlin Point Wastewater Treatment Plant in Victoria. Brand new facility. They built it in 2020. Essentially, they completed the project, and I've been working here since 2021 as the operations supervisor. I was hired into this role. The facility itself costs $350 million. The budget that I have is $13 million per year, essentially, and that covers wages, that covers frame name contractors or internal trades, SCADA personnel, millwrights, electricians, these types of things, and doing capital upgrades and all this stuff. So, um, I have 16 direct reports, plus all these extra folks that need my time and attention. I'm the chief operator on record here. So I have a pretty big portfolio. And that's why I say like, I had to work, I do work 50 hours a week or so. So for me, really after work, a couple hours and on weekends were the only times that I had to, and I'm not working from home. Like I'm driving to the plant, and home every day. So that's an hour commute if you improve doing some. So like I didn't have a ton of time to work on things. But whatever time I had to basically sink into it, right? Luckily I don't have kids. A lot of people probably on this do have kids. And so, that's one extra aspect that they'll have to work around and try to figure out. But lucky for me, I don't have children. So I was able to dedicate more time in that regard. Going back to your initial question. So yeah, it's a busy person, like just have a lot on the go all the time. And for my career, the next jump would be into the plant manager role, which essentially might be a few years down the road, but at least I'm ahead of it now because it's required to have some type of degree. So there we go.
That's so many people in these situations where you're like, you've done great in your career, but this next step, you have to have the degree and you're just capped if you don't. You basically are allowing yourself to be able to take that next step. There are also a lot of people that watch my videos that are like, my job sucks, or I don't have a job, and a degree can get you that first big step. It doesn't matter where you're at. If you're if you're wondering like, can I do this? The answer is yes. Maybe like some people like Matt, 6 months. I've had students where it takes 12 or more months, like, but it's not 5.5 years. And yes, it's hard work, but it's totally doable. Matt, I want to say congratulations to you. This is incredible. Anyone who wants to do this, again, I'll leave some links down below the video. Matt, anyone that's thinking like, I don't know if this is for me, or I don't know if I'm smart enough, or I don't know if I have the time, any suggestions for people having those thoughts?
Yeah, well, go back to the tools, right? Like, there was one tool that I used, which was a Google Chrome add-on called Voice Out. Now, this thing essentially you can highlight an entire page of text and hit listen, and we can play it in 2 times speed, and you can listen to the entire lesson or course page or whatever you need to consume, and you can go off and go do the dishes, while you're learning the material. And so, for me, as someone who's like not very good at like concentrating and reading a long paragraph and then going, oh boy, what did I just read? And going back to the top and then rereading it again. Because that that is typically what I do, unless it's, like saying a news article, I can kind of work my way through it quicker and be like, oh yeah, I understand that. Yeah, we're good. But for course material, this was a great tool. So Voice Out, Google Chrome add-on, and we can essentially just like consume, you know. You can also use I use Snagit, which is a great tool, but there's cheaper ones out there. But you can essentially like screenshot, say, if you came to a a Quizlet or a quiz or something like that within your course, you can sniff the correct answers, put it into a file or a folder, and then you can use that for review later. So what I did before I even started was I made 39 files. I knew what courses I had coming up because they let you know that even before you start. And I just labeled them all with the courses. And essentially I've used those to store my projects, asks, any of these like kind of snippets that I made, make flashcards for myself for studying.
We don't need as much time as we used to. You can be super busy and still squeeze this in your life. You have to be dedicated and you have to want it, right? Like you can't lazily go get a degree. Like that doesn't exist. It'd be cool if it did. It doesn't. If you're willing to do the work, you can do it. I can tell you that. If you want to learn like what am I going to be tested on, or what's the process? Like I teach all that. You're welcome to reach out to me and ask me, or use those links down below. Matt, congrats. Thank you so much for sharing your story. And for those watching, thanks for being here. We'll talk to you in the next video.